It's hard to imagine, but this immense funeral procession was not for a powerful head of state. It was for a poet. Then again, Rabindranath Tagore was much more than a poet. His incredible artistic genius endeared him to millions in India and around the world. Enormous crowds gathered to mourn his death in Calcutta on August 7th, 1941. I'd like to share with you my great love and admiration for Rabindranath Tagore. He's perhaps best known for his poetry, but he also wrote wonderful plays, captivating novels, and brilliant short stories. He composed lovely songs and painted striking expressionistic portraits. He was also an important educator. He founded Shantiniketan, a unique open-air school, as well as the prestigious Vishwa Bharati University. He was a major figure in the Brahmo Samaj, a religious reform movement. And, of course, he was the first in all of Asia to be awarded the coveted Nobel Prize. In 1861, when India was still a collection of princely states ruled by the British, Rabindranath Tagore was born in the city of Calcutta, or Kolkata as it's now known. Kolkata was the capital of British India, as well as its cultural capital, which it remains to this day. His father was Rabindranath Tagore, a philosopher and religious leader who was widely known as Maharshi, the great sage. The family name, Tagore, is an anglicized form of Thakur, as it's said in Bengali. Rabindranath founded the Brahmo Samaj reform movement, and much later made Rabindranath its secretary. Rabindranath's grandfather was Dwarkanath Tagore, an educated and wealthy industrialist who ensured that the family's stately mansion was an abode of culture, always graced with classical music, literature, and theatrical performances. Rabindranath was the youngest of 13 children, and he was known as Robi. He was mostly home-schooled by private tutors and subjected to strict discipline. He learned Sanskrit, English literature, physics, mathematics, and history, among other subjects. His creative gifts were apparent even as a child when he was drawn to write poems, some of which were later published. By 16, he had composed many short stories and several dramas for the stage in which he himself took roles. Sadly, he lost his mother around this time, which was the first of many tragedies in his life that would contribute to his lifelong artistic melancholy. When he was 19, Tagore went to England for further studies, but he was called back to Kolkata when his marriage to a 10-year-old girl named Mrinalini had been arranged, according to the customs of that time. Much later, Tagore became a strident critic of child marriage. They eventually had 5 children, 3 of whom survived childhood. Tagore was very close to his sister-in-law, Kadambari, who nurtured and inspired his literary efforts. Her death, shortly after his marriage, plunged him into deep depression. At the age of 29, Tagore moved to a remote place called Shilai Daho in what is now Bangladesh to manage his father's estates there. His family later joined him in this sprawling country house built by his father. Tagore was fond of boating on the river Padma. The unspoiled natural beauty of the region seemed to stimulate his creativity as his writing continued day after day. His joyful embrace of nature is woven into much of his poetry, like in this little piece, written in his own hand in both Bengali and English. My fancies are fireflies, sparks of living light, twinkling in the dark. The same voice murmurs in these desultory lines, which is born of wayside pansies, letting hasty glances pass by. The butterfly does not count years, but moments, and therefore has enough time. When he was 40, Tagore moved with his family to Shantiniketan, about 100 miles north of Kolkata, where a guest house and prayer hall had been built by his father long before. Tagore planned to develop the site into a unique experimental school. As a boy, Tagore hated being cooped up in his family's mansion and sternly tutored for hours each day. He longed to be outside, surrounded by nature. This led him to establish a residential school in which all classes were held outside, under the shade of trees, taught by teachers who lived there, together with the students, and were more like friendly mentors than strict taskmasters. Tagore himself designed its curriculum and taught classes. His eldest son, Rabindranath, was one of its first students. Later, Tagore established a full-fledged university there called Vishwa Bharati, whose alumni include former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi and Nobel Laureate Amartya Sen. Here in Shantiniketan is Tagore's youngest daughter, Meera, his son, Rabindranath, his daughter-in-law, Pratima, and his daughter, Bela. Sadly, Tagore's life at this time was marked by even more tragedies, as death successively took his wife, Mrinalini, one of his daughters, his father, Devendranath, and his youngest son. These many losses apparently led Tagore to consider human life to be as fragile, precious, and fleeting as a delicate flower. In this wonderful poem, Tagore compares his own life to a flower that must be offered in worship of God before it wilts away with time. This poem was set to music by me long ago, so children in our classes could sing it.
Pluck this little flower, take it, delay not. I fear it might droop and drop into the dust. It may not find a place in your garland, but honor it with a touch from your hand and pluck it. Pluck this little flower, take it, delay not. I fear it might droop and drop into the dust. I fear that the day ends before I am aware, and the time of offering goes by. Pluck this little flower, take it, delay not. I fear it might droop and drop into the dust. Though its color be not deep and its smell is faint, Use this flower in your work, pluck it while there's time. Pluck this little flower, take it, delay not. I fear it might droop and drop into the dust.
The style of Tagore's poetry ranges from classical formalism to the mystical, visionary, and ecstatic. His approach can be traced to a lineage established by Vaishnava poets in the 15th and 16th centuries. Tagore was also influenced by the mysticism of the ancient rishis who composed the Upanishads, and by later spiritual figures like Kabir and Ram Prasad. Tagore's works were further enriched by his exposure to rural Bengali folk music. Over the years, respect for this great poet grew so much that he became known as Gurudev. Most of Tagore's works are in his native Bengali language, but Tagore himself translated some of his works into English. The most famous of these is a collection of poems called Gitanjali. When Tagore visited London in 1911, he met the famous British poet William Butler Yeats. Yeats read some of Tagore's translations and insisted that they be published in England. In 1912, the first edition of Gitanjali was printed. It consisted of 103 poems Tagore had selected from already published collections in Bengali. Here is the first poem from Gitanjali. Thou hast made me endless, such is thy pleasure. This frail vessel thou emptiest again and again, and fillest it ever with fresh life. This little flute of a reed thou hast carried over hills and dales, and hast breathed through it melodies eternally new. At the immortal touch of thy hands, my little heart loses its limits in joy and gives birth to utterance ineffable. Thy infinite gifts come to me only on these very small hands of mine. Ages pass, and still thou pourest, and still there is room to fill. The exquisite beauty of Gitanjali and its wildly enthusiastic reception in literary circles around the world led to Tagore being awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1913. He wasn't able to attend the award ceremony in Stockholm, so he sent this message. I beg to convey to the Swedish Academy my grateful appreciation for the breadth of understanding which has brought the distant near and has made a stranger a brother. 2 years later, the British government conferred knighthood on him. Before Tagore won the Nobel Prize, few outside India knew much about him. But afterwards, he soon became a worldwide media sensation. Invitations poured in from all over the world, and Tagore began to travel extensively. Everywhere he was received with admiration and respect. Mahatma Gandhi visited Tagore in Shantiniketan and called him the Great Sentinel. Over his lifetime, Tagore's literary output was staggering. He wrote more than 1,000 poems, including entire stories in verse form. He wrote about 24 plays, including musical and dance dramas. He wrote 17 volumes of short stories, 8 novels, 4 novellas, and numerous essays on social, religious, and political issues. He wrote textbooks and edited literary journals. Tagore's plays were frequently performed during his lifetime and are still enjoyed today by thousands. Tagore himself took roles in some of his plays, as you can see in these old photos. Dozens of his works were adapted and produced as films in Bollywood and elsewhere by Satyajit Ray and other illustrious filmmakers. Tagore also composed the music and lyrics for many songs, more than 2,000 altogether. These songs are fondly known as Rabindra Sangeet and are extremely popular with Bengalis in India and around the world. Here's a brief rendition of a song by Debabrata Bishwas.
Ami gaan pe teroi, oy amar apon hridoy gohono dare, bare bare gaan pe teroi. Kono gopon basher kanna hasher gopon kotha, shuni bare 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 gaan pe teroi.
Throughout Tagore's lifetime, India was embroiled in a long and tumultuous struggle for freedom from British rule. Tagore supported the Indian independence movement, as it was called. In 1917, at the opening session of the Indian National Congress in Kolkata, Tagore recited this stirring patriotic poem from Gitanjali, presented here in Tagore's own voice.
Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habits, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake.
Tagore had a lifelong association with Mahatma Gandhi. They met many times to discuss India's fight for freedom. Tagore's personal political views were complex. On one hand, he criticized British occupation and supported Indian nationalists. But on the other hand, he criticized the spellbinding nationalistic fervor of the freedom movement, saying, "There can be no blind revolution, but instead the steady and purposeful education of the people." Tagore's views enraged some extremists, and in one case placed his life in danger. During a visit to San Francisco in 1916, Tagore narrowly escaped assassination by some Indian expatriates. 3 years later, a horrifying massacre took place during a protest in Punjab's holy city of Amritsar, where British troops shot dead nearly 1,000 demonstrators. In response, Tagore wrote to the Viceroy, Lord Chelmsford, and repudiated the knighthood bestowed upon him just a few years before. After India finally won her independence in 1947, one of Tagore's songs was adopted as India's national anthem. Here it is, with Tagore's own English translation and recited by him as a poem.
Janagana Mana Adhinayaka Jaya He Bharat Bhagya Vidhata Punjab Sindh Gujarat Maratha Dravida Utkala Banga Vindhya Himachala Jamuna Ganga Uschala Jaladhitaranga Tava Shubha Name Jage तब शुभयाशिष मागे गाहे तब जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे
Tagore always enjoyed drawing. He decorated many of his manuscripts with plants, vines, and strange creatures. At the age of 60, he took lessons from several artists and took up painting. In 20 years, he produced some 2,000 paintings, some of which were received with great acclaim in Europe and Russia. Tagore especially loved painting portraits. He painted self-portraits as well that seemed to reveal the dark side of his inner life. Tagore loved to travel. Between 1878 and 1932, he visited more than 30 countries on 5 continents. In his travels, he wanted to familiarize non-Bengali audiences with his works. He also wanted to spread his social and political ideas and raise funds for Vishwa Bharati University. He met many world leaders in the fields of science, literature, and politics. Tagore also carried out extensive correspondence with people around the world. He adorned some of his letters with little sketches and wrote to a man in the Netherlands, "I know it for certain that you are my brother in spirit, that for a long time you have been working for peace and truth and beauty in life." Tagore's last 4 years were marked by chronic pain and 2 long episodes of illness. In 1937, he fell into a coma and remained near death for weeks. After regaining consciousness, he wrote whenever he felt better, and the poetry he composed then is among his finest. Not surprisingly, those poems were often preoccupied with the subject of death. 3 years later, he suffered another coma from which he never recovered. In 1941, as World War II raged on and India was just 6 years away from independence, Tagore died on the 7th of August in an upstairs room of the very same mansion in Kolkata in which he was born. The world had lost an artistic giant whose genius would never be matched. Here is a poem in which Tagore anticipates his own death with a sense of deep gratitude. This poem, too, was set to music by me for our students.
When I go from here, let this be my parting word. When I go from here, I have tasted of the honey of the lotus that expands on the ocean of light, and thus am I blessed. When I go from here, let this be my parting word. When I go from here, in this playhouse of forms, oh, I have had my play. Here have I caught sight of him that is formless. When I go from here, let this be my parting word. When I go from here, whole body and my limbs have thrilled with his touch. If the end comes here, then let it come. When I go from here, let this be my parting word. When I go from here, let this be my parting word. When I go from here, let this be my parting word. When I go from here.
It would not be fitting to conclude this presentation with Tagore's death. After all, he lives on in his many works. So here's a final poem, also set to music, in which he prays for the well-being of all the people of his country.
Let the earth, air, and water, and the fruits of my country be sweet, my Lord, be sweet, my Lord. Let the homes and the markets and the fields of my country be full, my Lord, be full, my Lord. Let the promises and hopes, words and deeds of my country be true, my Lord, be true, my Lord. Let the lives and the hearts of the children of my country be one, my Lord, be one, my Lord. Be one, my Lord, be one, my Lord. Be one, my Lord, be one.